This video follows a previous one that was covering the first part of all these premises that they were built along the 10s, 1910s, 14s until 29. That it was the culmination of all these works because then it took place the main event that they had been prepared for so many years that it was an international exhibition. And it begins by one of the knots of Barcelona, Plaza España, and then it's structured like the main acts by this avenue that you can see from here called Maria Cristina after the regent queen of the times, and then it closes the perspective in a big palace where nowadays is the National Museum of Catalonia, and then it was like the central hall where the main ceremonies and events like the opening, the official opening with many kings, it took place. Well, you can see that many of the buildings along the 50s, 60s, even more recently by 90s, they had been built anew, replacing what they were the ones from the 20s in this clear and new classical Mediterranean and classical look, new Baroque, new Ionic, new Renaissance manierism. That all together, each element, like this dome you can see in the very center, that somehow is the point that begins this perspective from Plaza España or where it ends. Then these four freestanding Ionic columns, a copy of these Greek columns since the 5th century before Christ. So as said, each element is quite old-fashioned, especially for the times. If you made something like this in 15th century, that was again this rediscovering of classical elements after so many centuries forgotten along the Middle Ages with Romanesque and Gothic, like Brunelleschi, Palladio, Bramante did, and so many others. So then it was brilliant. But to make this architecture in 1920s, it was really reactionary and bringing nothing new. Because at the same time, let us remember that in Germany, even in France, in USA especially, it was arising a very modern architecture, the one of the skyscrapers, showing the steel, showing the glass, with more plain elements and getting rid of the decorative elements. That actually, in this exhibition, it was built one of the most brilliant buildings of this new language by Mies van der Rohe, one of the leading figures of the modern architecture. I will leave this for one of the latest chapters before we arrive there. So we are going to see a succession of these buildings that let me insist individually they are old-fashioned, but the point of this area, is the whole ensemble. The whole ensemble, as it was made in this very grand manner and size, and the disposition of all these elements, the symmetry, the perspective that it creates all together, that makes it that makes it good, no, or great. And also, it's good to remember that the present shape is not really the one that it was in the 20s. Nowadays, look like this neoclassic with very modern buildings. But in the times, it was a mix of new classical, Italian, Mediterranean look with Art Deco, because a part of the magic fountains that gave this point of light and water and movement, because the jets of water at night they are lighted so you could see many colors. Apart where there are nowadays these adolescents sitting down here, the motos, the cars, and these pools of the fountain and these also old-fashioned street lights, they were very art deco street lights, like eight-sided or ten-sided obelisks, kind of asparagus, like 1, 2, 3, 4 meters high from there, from this kind of palace, until the Plaza España. So altogether, it was quite an interesting fusion of old and new. Let us remember the, the magic fountains designed by, by Carlos Boigas. And you can see also here these columns that we will treat in a later chapter. So here again, you can see this kind of ondulation, this concave convex movement of this pool, and this terrace shape um, staircase movement to make easier to walk and also even to build the things in what was in what it was really the hill slope of the hill of Montjuic. That actually, by the other side, many other words they were developed in a style that has been called here or somehow has been used this description of this title to ensemble together buildings of this period that is noucentisme. Noucentisme refers to concepts nou, new in Catalan, and altogether novecentismo, 1900s. And that was the style that here in Catalonia, where it was not so welcome and developed, and it was like aborted the Art Deco, but it was the main style that ruled in Europe by 20s. Here in Catalonia was developed this new look to the Greeks, to the Romans, to the classical elements, but somehow in a more neat, purified style. Also, well, because it was here in Catalonia a kind of conservative government, a home rule. A bit later in Spain was established a dictatorship that was even um, more reactionary, a kind of imitation, a bad imitation, thanks God, a bad imitation of Mussolini dictatorship, and even the discovery of an old Greek site or town, polis, in the north of Catalonia, nowadays Costa Brava, Empúries, from a people called the Phoceans from Minor Asia, that also in Marsella, they established by 6th century before Christ. So by 1908, the architect that also actually was in charge to urbanize the whole area, made a couple of buildings also, Puig Cadafal. In 1908, was in charge of the archaeological site of Empúries. And for Catalonia, it was such a shock, a pleasing shock, that we were part of this great story of the Athenians, the Spartans, so the classical Greek. And somehow that was quite an important injection of new thinking and a new ideology that was substituting and replacing the Art Nouveau that has been reigning in a very liberated way, bringing so many colors, bringing so much curviness, um, an idea of the prototype of beauty of the woman, like the femme fatale, all these nymphs, dreaming girl, anemic girls, quite slender, and it was substituted by a much more heavy, healthy girl in Catalan called ben plantada, the well-built girl. Actually, this term was theorized by a great critic of art of the times, Eugeni Dors, that built or wrote a little book called La Ben Plantada. So all these different reasons or factors, they were helping to make a rise in Catalonia, a new a new time for the arts, that it was not anymore this more famous and actually more cool and appreciate eye-catching architecture and aesthetic that is the Modernisme, Gaudí, Domenico Montaner, and so many from 10, 15 years before. So here this kind of egg elongated um, reliefs like the egg and dart from the Ionic, here low relief depicting kind of now from the Greeks, because it's an allegory of navigation. These times they love so much to make allegories of the things, of the industries, or was a girl bearing a kind of wheel of a machine, or when it was an allegory. They wanted to represent agriculture. So as a girl, normally girls, they act for girls, carrying a shovel. Or when it was navigation, it was an anchor or a kind of ship, as you can see. But altogether has this look of antiquity. These girls with these bills, even the cannon, the body cannon, instead of, as we were saying, more slender or cubist, for example, when in Paris or in so many places in the world, Lempica, for example, was developing a new body aesthetic. But here, for the reasons we're commenting, also because the admiration to Italy, especially by this dictatorship, not the home rule of Catalonia we're commenting. It was a bit later when it was finished all the wars, a dictatorship in Catalonia, that was really in love with Mussolini idea. And remember, Mussolini also, from an aesthetic point of view, brought again into the scene this old-fashioned aesthetic, like a kind of mausoleum look here. Oh, well, for the sculptures, and actually for the sculptures it was a good moment, no, because it was again in demand many sculptures. Actually, it was the last good moment for them because later it was not so many commissions anymore for sculptures. Slowly, so they were abandoned. At least the figurative way to make sculptures. Actually, good to remember that by this time was arising one of the greatest sculptors of the times, Aristides Maillol, from north of Catalonia, Banyuls, that then also, for quite a long time, he established in Paris, there is in Paris, a museum dedicated to him, and he developed this Mediterraneanism, a way to see so and to represent especially the female body in a way that somehow connect with this idea we have of the warmness and healthiness of the Mediterranean. Well, here we approach to this central piece that catches the main attentions of the people by spring, summer, early autumn, when at the evening by 9 o'clock they ignite and they put to work the great lights and jets, colorful jets of water, and the music of the most cool songs of the moment, or the one of about Barcelona, on Barcelona by Freddie Mercury and Montserrat Caballé, Las Fonts Mágicas. You can see also actually sometimes they smell, and it is said that when they made the opening from the very top, where there are the main cascade or waterfall that begins with a pressure. Everything works at pressure, or at least it was working by pressure, and making a closed circuit. Nowadays, probably they have some pumps helping all together jets of waters, and then that the water comes back to the beginning. But also in between, you can see these four columns. And here you can see the reason why they were placed. Because they look Greek, Ionic. You can tell it by the capital with this kind of curler or roll. And remember that in these times it was discovered this old Greek town. It was very appealing. So it was like an injection for many architects to say, let's build again like the Greeks, not because we are their descendants somehow. Though really the Catalans is more, they are more Latins, descendants of the Roman. Though is it true that this colony in the northeast of Catalonia, it was very helpful then as the first seat of civilization in what later became, much later, became Catalonia. So the first garlic probably, or the first plant olive trees, they are due to these people. But these columns, apart of representing this heritage of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks, as they are like four sticks or four bars, they represent the Catalan flag. So actually, all these people, until the Spanish implemented here a dictatorship, actually two, in just a difference of 7 years. Remember that the Spanish political thinking is always still like conquistador thinking, so against the Catalans and the Basque. And actually, these columns designed by Puig Calafalch that also designed these side pavilions that later we will comment in a very clear Italianese look as a kind of Palladio, Palladio villa from 16th, 17th century. As they represent the Catalan flag that remember its four vertical red bars on a yellow background as four bloody strips from a legend of a king that was giving birth to the Catalan nation. So, as the Spanish military rulers of Primo de Rivera, so called, that was the leader, the kind of president, dictator president of the times, he demolished these, these columns that they were built by 1919. And 10 years later, as still was this dictatorship that was reactionary, conservative, and anti-Catalan, like all the dictatorships in Catalonia, it was not that heavy and harsh and, and criminal as a longer dictatorship that came some 10 years later, 36 or 39 until 78. But also it was a dictatorship, and well, demolishing these these columns. Yes, we were commenting the the whole area to make it easier for the walker or even to place the buildings. It was like organized in different terraces. There is the upper level, then there is the second one. Somehow the columns they help so to as a kind of visual way to connect this central level of terrace with the upper one. And over there we can see the Venetian towers that they were the design of Rabantos, Ramon Rabantos, that also by this time he was designing one of the main dish or one of the main dishes of this international exhibition of Barcelona 1929, the Pueblo Español, that later we'll talk about. And again, look, by themselves, each of these towers, just like a copy, no, a shameful copy of the campaniles from Venice from 15th, 16th century, but the point of them is where they are placed, and they are twin, not just a single. That is also the place of important events like music concerts or the fair of Barcelona, the trade fair of Barcelona, like the Congress, where they make the congresses and different business events. And well, we will finish the second chapter dedicated to the exhibition 29, having a look to this little obelisk with the base, with these heads of cráneo, book cráneo, like a goat, the head of a goat, that from the horns. They are hanging these festoons or festoons, the horns of abundance, like an element that they have been present since the Romans, and again especially developed in the Manieries and along the Baroque period. You can see this kind of ellipses, a kind of inverted X, and in between these little sticks, so-called darts, you can see around also these little balls and petals together binded by cords. Again, these elongated eggs, this court of pearls, always these decorative elements that they were present since the Greeks even, no? Especially to make the friezes and the upper cornices of the temples.